Nick Reiner is back in court headlines, but this time the new development is not a new criminal charge. It is a separate trust fund fight over money his late parents, director Rob Reiner, and photographer and producer Michele Reiner allegedly set aside for him years before their deaths. According to a probate petition filed in Los Angeles County Court on June 8, 2026, Nick Reiner is asking for access to money from an individual trust that his parents established for his benefit. The petition says the trust is worth at least $1.5 million, and it argues that part of that money should already have been distributed to him when he turned 30. Reiner is now 32. That filing arrives while Nick Reiner remains charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder in the December 2025 deaths of his parents. He is pleaded not guilty, remains in custody without bail, and is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty in court. And that is what makes this update so closely watched. The petition does not ask the probate court to decide what happened to Rob and Michele Reiner. In fact, the filing says those facts are not at issue in the trust litigation. Instead, it asks a narrower question: whether Nick Reiner can access money that his attorneys say is legally his, even while he is facing one of the most serious criminal cases in Los Angeles. For verified entertainment updates without the rumors, subscribe to Starline Entertainment. The latest update is that Nick Reiner's civil attorneys say he needs the trust money for 2 reasons: to help pay for his legal defense and to cover basic support needs while incarcerated. The petition says the trustee has refused to release funds, citing concerns about Nick's ability to manage the trust. But Reiner's filing argues that those concerns do not override what it describes as mandatory distribution terms. According to the petition summarized by multiple outlets, Rob and Michele Reiner created separate smaller trusts for Nick and his siblings. The petition says Nick's trust required half of the money to be distributed outright when he turned 30, with the rest due when he turned 35. The filing argues that he never received the first distribution and has not been given a full accounting of the trust's value. The trustee named in the petition is attorney Paul R. Kanan. The petition alleges that the trustee has offered shifting explanations for withholding the money, including concerns about competence. But Nick Reiner's attorneys argue there has been no court declaration that he is incompetent and no required medical determination that would justify withholding a mandatory distribution. The filing also says the money could affect Nick Reiner's representation in the criminal case. At the beginning of the proceedings, he was represented by Alan Jackson, a high-profile Los Angeles defense attorney. Jackson later withdrew from the case in January. Nick is now represented by public defender Kimberly Green. The petition says Jackson is willing to consider returning if funds become available. In a declaration included with the petition, Jackson said his firm stood ready, willing, and able to resume representation if the money issue is resolved. That does not mean the court will grant the request. It also does not mean the trust dispute changes the criminal charges. What it does mean is that a second courtroom issue has now become part of the public story. One case concerns the deaths of Rob and Michele Reiner. The other concerns whether money from Nick Reiner's personal trust can be used now, including for his defense. The criminal case began after Rob and Michele Reiner were found dead inside their Brentwood home on December 14, 2025. The Los Angeles Police Department later announced that Nick Reiner had been arrested that night and booked for murder. Prosecutors then filed 2 counts of first-degree murder with the special circumstance of multiple murders. They also alleged the use of a knife. Nick Reiner pleaded not guilty in February 2026. At that hearing, his public defender entered the plea on his behalf. The court ordered him to remain held without bail. Since then, the case has moved slowly, partly because of discovery and case preparation issues. In April, Nick Reiner made a brief court appearance, and the case was delayed again. Public reporting from that hearing said prosecutors had a large volume of discovery to provide to the defense, and that further proceedings were pushed to September. The next court date has been reported as September 15. There is also one major penalty question still unresolved. Prosecutors have said the charges could carry life without parole or the death penalty if there is a conviction. But the district attorney's office has not publicly announced a final decision on whether it will seek capital punishment. That uncertainty is one reason the trust petition matters. A first-degree murder case with special circumstances can require extensive legal preparation, expert review, discovery analysis, and long-term defense resources. Reiner's petition argues that no use of his own funds could be more important than securing counsel and preparing his defense. But the trust dispute is also sensitive because of who created the trust. The petition says the money came from arrangements established by Rob and Michele Reiner, the same parents whose deaths are at the center of the criminal charges. That tension is why the filing goes out of its way to separate the trust question from the criminal accusations. It says the facts about what did or did not happen to Rob and Michele are not for the probate court to decide. Rob Reiner's legacy remains a major part of why the case has drawn national attention. He was known first to many viewers as Mike Stivic on All in the Family, then as the filmmaker behind This Is Spinal Tap, Stand By Me, The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, Misery, A Few Good Men, and The American President. Michele Singer Reiner was a photographer and producer, and she and Rob were married for more than 3 decades. After their deaths, the public response focused not only on the criminal investigation, but on the scale of the loss in Hollywood. Friends, collaborators, and fans remembered Rob's career and the couple's long partnership. Their children, Jake and Romy, also released a statement expressing grief and asking for privacy as the legal process moved forward. For Nick Reiner, the current public record is this: he is charged, he has pleaded not guilty, he remains in custody without bail, and the case has not gone to trial. The trust petition is a civil proceeding that could influence his resources, but it does not decide guilt, innocence, motive, or the facts of the criminal case. The Starline takeaway is that this new filing changes the public focus from the initial horror of the case to the mechanics of what happens next. It raises questions about legal defense funding, family trust terms, trustee discretion, and how a probate dispute can intersect with a criminal prosecution. But it does not answer the central criminal question, and it should not be treated as proof of anything beyond the trust dispute itself. What remains unclear is how the probate court will respond, whether the trustee will formally oppose the request, whether Alan Jackson will return to the defense team if funds are released, and whether prosecutors will seek the death penalty. So the next public developments to watch. For now, Nick Reiner's trust petition is the latest turn in a case that remains legally unresolved. The criminal proceedings are ongoing. The defense has entered a not guilty plea. The prosecution has not publicly disclosed many details about motive or trial evidence. And the next major question is whether the court will allow Nick Reiner to use money from a trust created by his parents as he prepares to fight the charges connected to their deaths.